Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of WIP FM 113.0, organized by IEEE Power and Energy Society Young Professionals Women in Power. This is a monthly talk show intended to introduce eminent leaders and experts from power and energy sector and the various opportunities in this field to give you the inspiration, encouragement, and motivation towards achieving your dream as well as ways to sustain your passion. I'm really happy and excited to host this episode. We are joined by a very dynamic person from the power and energy sector, a woman who has been active for over 28 years in teaching, research, and service at six United States universities. She is the Edmund O. Schweitzer III Chair in Power Apparatus and Systems in the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at Washington State University. She has been a chief scientist at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory since February 2020. She has a joint appointment at PNNL as part of the PNNL WSU Advanced Grid Institute. In August 2021, she started her role as co-director of AGI. I am pleased to welcome Dr. Noel N. Schulz. Very happy to have you with us today. Welcome to the Stock Show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on today. And welcome to everyone that's joining us today live, either this morning, this evening, or this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Noel. I know you don't require an introduction as you are a well-known person in IEEE and also in the industry. But for the sort of a traditional custom for our listeners and viewers, would you give a brief introduction about yourself, touching upon your educational and cultural background?
Great. I'm Noel Schulz, as was mentioned, and I am a professor at Washington State University. And over the time, I was born in Virginia in the United States, and I grew up in Virginia. I got my master's at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, Virginia, and then got my PhD at University of Minnesota. I've had a chance to teach at Virginia Tech, University of North Dakota, Michigan Tech, Mississippi State, Kansas State, and now Washington State. So kind of traveled all over the U.S. My husband is also a faculty member, and actually we met as undergraduates. So I was a freshman and he was a junior. He's a chemical engineer, and we also have two sons. Timothy, who is a computer scientist that works with a startup, and then Andrew, our younger son, is finishing his PhD at Georgia Tech in mechanical engineering. And we have a daughter-in-law, Trisha, who is Tim's wife, that's a computer scientist. So we're kind of a nerdy family. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and so I kind of came to education from her support. And then my dad got his PhD in electrical engineering. He originally was in the power area, but that moved to computer engineering. And he was a faculty member, and that's kind of where I came across engineering. And so I think that's some of the main background. My husband, Kirk, is, as I said, a faculty member. He's also a university administrator. He's president of Washington State University. And so we've had a chance to be the first family at both Kansas State and at Washington State University.
I can see a happy family there. And as you very well said, a nerdy family.
Yes, very. Our sons didn't go into electrical or chemical engineering because they didn't want to pick between mom and dad. So they went into other fields of STEM.
That was a good move. But yeah, great to know. And it sounds interesting. And it's a close to 3 decades of experience that you have got, and it's really a remarkable achievement. And I assume that it would have been really wonderful and a diverse journey that you had. So how has it been? Like, would you mind elaborating on the different responsibilities that you held over the period?
Sure. So a lot of it kind of comes back to some of the dual career and what two-body opportunities that we talk about. So as I said, I got my bachelor's and master's at Virginia Tech, and at that time, my husband finished his PhD, and he and I got positions at University of North Dakota. So I was an instructor for a year and taught electrical engineering and really liked it and thought I really want to be a faculty member. So I went back to the University of Minnesota to get my PhD, and there had a chance to work with Bruce Wallenberg, that has written a book in the power space. And that really also got to work with industry. I worked with Xcel Energy. It was Northern States Power at the time, and really liked the industry connection. And so then moved to Michigan Tech after getting my PhD, and there worked with industry, worked with NSP or Xcel Energy now, and also worked with Siemens. And what I really love about the power industry is the opportunity to work with industry as well as what we would do with federal grants and activities, and really having students get involved. I started getting I did a little more work with women in engineering at Michigan Tech, and then created some networks there, and then moved to Mississippi State, where I was part of a large project that worked with the Navy, Office of Naval Research, on the all-electric ship. And there I also did some work on professional development for faculty and more women in engineering, worked on networks, particularly for faculty women across engineering. And in addition to doing research and teaching in all those roles, and teaching in the power space. Then we moved to Kansas State University, and there I worked as a faculty member and then became director of a industry center where we had about 10 utilities and industry partners that worked. We worked on workforce, trying to make sure we have the workforce of tomorrow, and worked on research topics related to power and energy. After 7 years as I also moved into the Office of Research and worked with as Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Programs, where I helped other faculty do research and also worked with graduate students. How do we help graduate students have the best and brightest opportunities? Then in 2016, we moved to Washington State University. Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, a company that does protection and other aspects of manufacturing for power grid, is located there, and I was really excited to interact with them. And then I work with graduate students again, as well as we have a large project, a $30 million project with the Department of Energy and the Department of Science and Technology from India, where we're working on advanced distribution systems, and I can talk more about that a little bit later. And I also work with, as you mentioned, I'm co-director of our Advanced Grid Institute, which is a partnership between PNNL, one of our DOE national labs, and Washington State University in the advanced grid space. So lots of different universities, lots of different positions, and have really had a rich opportunity in my academic career. And then obviously we'll talk more about my time with the PES board and PES activities as well.
So this is an interesting journey. And you mentioned you had been closely related to the industry part, and that's really good to know. And I think it would help you in guiding the graduate students and also with the PhD students, because usually what we have seen, there's a gap between the industry and academia. But being in the academia but working closely with the industry, I think it would have been really easy for you to manage those things, unlike the other professors.
Well, I think it's really an opportunity we have in the power and energy space is really to work closely with industry. And I've been fortunate in my all over the country to be able to work with different utilities. I mentioned Northern States Power Company, worked with some companies in Michigan, worked with TVA when we were in Mississippi, and Entergy, as well as Southern Company, Mississippi Power, worked with Kansas City Power and Light, and now work with Avista, a bunch of utilities, Sonomish PUD, Energy Northwest, a lot of utilities in Washington. And I think that's one of the great advantages of our power and energy space, and particularly for faculty in power and energy, is we we don't only have to look at federal funds and support, but we can work with industry. And like you said, it's also awesome for our students to be able to work. And I have a lot of students that spent a summer in industry, master students and PhD, that really get to see the differences between the academics and the applications of what they're learning in the classroom and what they're researching. And I think that really, pun intended, that grounds us in reality related to what we're trying to accomplish in our field.
Exactly. I can very well feel that. And I totally agree to what you said. When you have this experience from the industry, it actually brings more opportunities for the students to understand the practical aspects of it. And as is rightly said, power and energy sector gives a lot of opportunities in that aspect. And like you mentioned, like you were related mostly towards the academic side, but being in the field of power and energy right from the start of your professional life, how do you think has it been for women? What are your views on women's growth and participation over the years in this sector?
Yeah, so that's something that there's several times I've been the only woman in the room. And I remember one time at a workshop, the person started and said, "Good morning, gentlemen, and Noel." And and sometimes that can be, you can feel isolated or alone. But I think one of the most important things, we continue to work on this, and this was one of my passions, um, particularly when I was IEEE PES president in 2012 and 2013, is the Women in Engineering, Women in Power activities and getting women together, because I really think networks are important. Networks have been really important to me. And so I think our numbers are growing, but we still have room to improve. Um, but I also think that is a little bit dependent on countries and locations. As I've traveled across the world, some areas, there seem to be less perceived barriers for women in STEM than others. And some of the challenges can be more what we would call microaggressions than they would be, big challenges. But I still think we need to continue to work on that, on having a couple of things, networks that I talked about. I think it's really important for folks to see role models, to see someone that looks like them. And when I was a sophomore in college, I had a woman professor teach me electronics, and she had two kids and was teaching and successful. And I said, if she could do it, I can do it. And that's why platforms like this provide a chance for people to see someone, to get to get different bits of information from that, and then use that for their careers. So I think finding networks, finding role models, and really, I think we're making progress in what we're doing. I think obviously there's a lot recently about diversity, equity, and inclusion across the U.S. and other parts of the world. And one of the things that really hit me early in my career, in about 1990, I went to a workshop, and the president of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering said that diversity is not about quotas or checking a box, but as an engineer, to have the best solution, you need to have diversity of thought. And that is age, that is gender, that is ethnicity, experience-based, socioeconomic, and that really, to have optimal engineering solutions, you have to have diverse teams that look at lots of different perspectives. And so I think it's really important that we look at the different perspectives that different people bring to the table. And one of the pieces of that is getting more women involved in engineering and the power space. And I think it's also important that our male allies help in places, because sometimes it's hard for you to advocate for yourself. but others can help advocate for you depending on the environment. So I would really encourage when we talk about women in engineering or women in power, I really tell people it's about people who are supporting women in engineering and women in power. So all folks are welcome to be part of that solution.
Yeah, and I remember when I was in my college, when they say women in engineering activities, the first thing that boys would ask, isn't this for girls when you say women in engineering activities? So that was kind of a misconception that they had. Like, okay, WI is for women, whereas it is actually not. And it took some time to make them realize what exactly the mission and vision of women in engineering is, or the women in power is. But I guess right now we have more men coming forward to support women in this area. I think so.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that's an important. As I mentioned, there are times I'm the only woman in the room, and so to have someone support me, it had to be a man. And I've had male mentors who have helped me along the way. And so it's about advocacy and helping increase the number of women in engineering or women in power. But there are also some opportunities when we get together as women to talk about some of the challenges we might have to get that as we look at trying to have families. And although that is becoming both men and women more now worried about integrating family and work, but I really think there's opportunities. One of the things that really struck me as we talk about careers is there's a book by Sheryl Sandberg called Lean In. And in that, she talks about instead of a career ladder, you should think about your career as a jungle gym. And when you think about a jungle gym, sometimes you go down to go up, but there are also multiple ways to get to one destination on a jungle gym. And I really like that because I think, the challenge with a career ladder, you go up or you go down or you fall off. And a jungle gym really gives you lots of ways to go. And that's really, really struck me when I read that and thought about that is as I think about my career and particularly dual careers where you're trying to have opportunities for both people. Sometimes we do kind of non-traditional things, but we still have opportunities to lead and grow. And so I really like the jungle gym approach. And I think that can be especially important for women as they're looking at trying to do professional activities and balance what they may want to do related to personal activities.
Yeah, this sounds interesting when you mentioned like uh, the kind of approach that one should be taking, uh, because there are certain instances where we may feel low when we just go down the ladder, but then if we try to identify that there are other ways where we can reach out to the goal, that gives a positive attitude or an optimistic feeling. I think that's a very good recommendation that you made, and I believe every woman can have a look on that book and feel motivated rather than feeling low.
Yeah, one of the other challenges women have is what we call imposter syndrome. And you can always search on the internet about imposter syndrome, but it's that little voice in your head that says, well, maybe you're not good enough, or when you run into an obstacle, maybe you can't make it, and or you just got lucky on that test that you did well on, and I still in my mid 50s have questioned myself at times. And so imposter syndrome is another thing that can keep us from being successful. So that's where having a network and having friends that can support you in those times you have doubt can be very helpful.
I agree to that. Even I have faced myself this scenario before, and whenever there is a success or something that good happens, okay, is that really that should be happening? Have I put in that kind of effort in order to achieve this? But yeah, slowly as time passes, I am trying to mold myself and convince myself, saying that okay, you have done it really well, and that's why you have got it. Right? But I think
Exactly. That's a great example. That's a great example. And something I started early in my career, my dad actually mentioned this, is My dad used to talk about successes as warm fuzzies. They make you feel warm and fuzzy, feel good. And so I actually started a folder in my email, and I started a file in my file cabinet that when I got a letter of support or got a congratulations or got anytime I got an award, or when a grad student sent me an email and said, hey, Dr. Schulz, this is what's happening, and I appreciate what you did. I put those in that folder, either the paper folder or the email folder. And when I'm having a bad day, I'll go back and remind myself of the good things. And so I encourage everyone to have a warm fuzzies or successes folder that they put those in, that they can go back and remind themselves when they're low about the good things that are happening.
Yeah. Now I can feel some kind of thought that, okay, what I am also doing is kind of in the right path, because I have a folder in my email saying accomplishments and achievements, where I have moved all my appreciation or congratulatory emails to that folder, so that later point of time I can go back and check and feel happy for myself.
That's great. You've already started on that path, and that can help. That can help a lot with imposter syndrome.
Okay, that's a good piece of information. At least for me, it's a very good takeaway from this discussion. Like the first takeaway, I would say.
Okay.
Dr. Noel, you mentioned you have been in the research field for a long time. You have guided almost 45 students in their master degrees, 15 PhD students, published over 175 papers, 2 book chapters, and brought in over $40 million in external research through individual and collaborative projects, including a US National Science Foundation Career Award. Do you think research is important in one's career? Do you have any tips for our researchers on how they can grow themselves?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges with research is you have to kind of find your own identity, and that's one of the things that and you have to find things you like to do. And one of the advice I got early on in my career is that I need to think ahead, not think about what everybody else is doing right now, but then think about what is something that is going to be needed in 5 years, in 10 years. And then how can I start building that program and by doing different activities. And so I think in the research arena, the other piece of advice I would have is I we have an opportunity because we work with industry is to get real data sets and to work with industry. And I was fortunate, my first research grant was with a company, and that provided some data that then helped me for my National Science Foundation grant. And so I think, and those are different kinds of projects. When you work with industry, you spend a lot of time working together and coming up with ideas, and then you kind of write a 3 to 5 page proposal and you get it funded. When you work with the government, at least in the US, you write a 15 page proposal. It kind of goes into a black hole for 6 months and then pops out as a yes or no. So I think thinking about how to create partnerships that can help you, whether that's partnerships at your university or partnerships at industry. Early in my career, a lot of my research projects were by myself when I first started. And then when I moved to Mississippi State University, we were doing group projects. And what was cool about group projects is one of my colleagues would write a paper and I would contribute some to it, but then and then I would write a paper and their name would be on that. And that enabled me to really get more recognition and activities. They could also present on our work. And so by collaborating in a team, we were able to have a multiplier of both writing publications, doing presentations, and helping on that. And so that was something I learned early on. And some of it depends on the situation you're in, but particularly in finding team members that you can work with, that then you work as a group and then you have a common set of goals that you can do, can help with your research reputation, getting your publications out there. Also, then hopefully they write a grant later that you're a co-PI on, and so it helps multiply activities. So, I think you want to create your own brand and your own reputation, but also have opportunities to work in multiple areas. Um, I think one of the things early on for researchers is trying to find that one paper that gives you the guidance you need to do all the that literature review that gives you all the background you need. And unfortunately, we don't we don't they're normally not out there. So I think it's really creating a plan on what you want to do, sending a target, and then starting the little steps towards that by reading papers, by then sometimes when you look at a proposal, when you look at a project, it looks really big and hard. So break it down into steps and figure out what are the pieces you need in order to move that forward. And then sometimes those pieces, you can find someone else to help you. For instance, at PNNL, the National Lab, they do a lot of matrix work where they pull people that know machine learning or data analytics to work with Power, or cybersecurity experts to work with Power. So I think also working to find partnerships to help people to extend what you know, so that your team is even has even stronger capabilities related to that.
Okay.
So those are a few things that off the top of my head.
Great. And one thing which I liked is the collaborative work, which is key in research. And that is where I guess most of them fail to understand. They might be thinking that, okay, I'll have to do this myself. But then if you actually work together, you get better ideas and also even efficient ways to solve that particular problem. And
I
today I was
think,
actually,
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, well, I think today, especially, that's true as we look at the power and energy space and the connections to communications, the connections to controls, the connections to cybersecurity, the connections to machine learning, AI, data analytics. It's really hard for one person to be an expert in all those areas. And we really need to be building teams. You can get some training in that, but when we talk about research and trying to do new concepts and ideas, uh, by having that diverse team, the same way we talk about diversity in other ways, the diverse team in research can really help you be able to tackle a problem and come up with better solutions and more innovative solutions.
Great. And there's actually one more thing which I heard. So today I was speaking with one of my friends who is doing his PhD. When he started his PhD work, he had prepared a proposal which was accepted, and then he started working on it. But then after 1 or 1.5 years, the same application has been implemented by someone else. So this is kind of another challenge that the researchers face, I think. Have you come across any situation like this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's one of the things when you're doing new research, you have sometimes people publish about what you're doing. And what we have to do in that case is find a different angle from what that person did and build on what that person did. But that's also a great example why it's important to publish. There's some people that feel they've got to get the paper perfect before they publish it. And
Okay.
one of the things I found with PES, sometimes it's the second or third review before it's published. So you're going to have time to revise it and update it. So you want to make sure to, excuse me a second. You want to make sure to not, it doesn't have to be 100% when you submit it. I mean, you want it to be very good, but you're going to typically have a chance. They're going to be reviews that give you different perspectives. So sometimes being timely is more important than being perfect. And, I think that's also, when you have ideas and things like that. The other thing that I think is important is sometimes to sit back and look at the big picture as a researcher, we get really stuck on the details sometimes. And sometimes when we have a team member or we work with somebody and have to explain it, we can get some different ideas. But particularly as you're talking about master's and PhD researchers that are really getting into the details, you might want to step back because you're kind of you're running into a wall, and you got to stop running into that wall, but you're not sure where to go from there.
Mm. Probably I should give him this tip.
But I think, I tell my students when we run into something like that, we can always do a different angle. We can leverage that. We can compare to that work with some other work that we're doing. So you there's opportunities there.
Okay, that's great. Because what I also think is like when I prepare for my PhD proposal, I can keep all these things in my mind so that I'm also ready with this kind of solutions. If at all I come across any challenges like this, I think it would help me. Yeah. So, no, we have been hearing about this Paris Climate Agreement Act, the COP26 conference, which happened last year. For every country has set specific net zero targets and also promotion of more renewable and clean energy sources. And it is said that the existing grid infrastructure would require enhancements to support this increased renewable penetration. So, how does this opportunity for grid modernization change? And also, what are the various opportunities involved for this?
Yes, so I think I tell my students now is a great time to be in the power and energy space. There's so much going on as we talk about clean energy goals, decarbonization, and as we look at how the distribution system and how loads play into the overall grid. And we're seeing our the large U.S. India project we have is on advanced distribution systems, and we're looking at storage. We're looking at the integration of solar and wind. We're looking at how do we come up with different control algorithms to try to balance those. How do we integrate electric vehicles? One of the things we're seeing more and more across the world, but particularly in the US, is um, the electrification of other systems, where we're talking about electric vehicles now. And how do we take a technology like electric vehicles, where it sounds great to be able to plug your car in, but we've got to find a way to create those electrons and get those to where the charging cars are being charged and not overload the grid. And how can we use um, different different loads that can be changed to help us in those times where if we have heavy demand, certain loads can decrease, or if we have low demand, we can use that for storage or for making hydrogen or for other options and things that are out there. So I think the goals that the governments have are great, but I think we still have a ways to go in the engineering side to meet those goals. And so it's really up to us to have those innovations and come up with some of those solutions. And a lot of that comes from pulling teams together with multiple, what we talked about earlier, with multiple talents to look at this. Power electronics is obviously, as we talk about inverter, the integration of inverters in the grid, and how does that change how we control things, and that takes away some inertia, but there's some other opportunities. Like any technology, there's some positives and then there's some challenges we have to work with. So, I think it's a great time to be in the power and energy space. I think as we look at integrating the technologies to help create a clean energy and help reduce the impact on our climate, it's going to take a lot of engineers looking at solutions, looking at innovative ways to to work on things, to look at how do we use data centers that can be used both as a load, but also have backup generation that might be able to be used at different times. How do we integrate those together? How do we use machine learning and data analytics to predict and then be able to um, have dynamic line ratings that we can use at different times. Looking at how do we deal with wind changes or clouds over solar? How do we predict those so we can keep the grid reliable? We also have obviously the issue of resiliency right now, where we seem to have more and more impacts of storms, different types of storms, weather events, also sometimes man-made challenges. But how do we how are we able to measure that resilience so we can predict what we need to do ahead of time to help us get the lights back on sooner? So it really is a great time to be in this space. There's lots going on. One of the things, I think, is we're seeing is folks need to kind of have exposure to multiple areas.
Mm.
I think one of your questions that we may talk about is the digitization of the grid and the cyber physical interaction now, and whether that's cybersecurity aspects or whether that's looking at AI, machine learning, data analytics. Um, in a meeting I had this week, one of the folks said, well, they couldn't find enough power engineers, so they were taking computer scientists and teaching them about power engineering. And so I think that's going to be I think I encourage my students to get experiences in some of the computer science spaces as well as power, that's going to be an area of being a bridge between power and the computer scientists that are part of a research group or a company is important, because it's a lot of computers. Computers are important.
Mm. And we can actually see this importance of AI and ML in every sector right now. So, as even as power engineers, though with the basic concepts of electrical engineering, I think it is high time that we also step into the programming field and at least learn how those technologies can be applied in the power sector. And that is where the important lies in.
I think this is a great opportunity for the young professionals, because the folks that are more senior, they don't have some of those experiences,
Mm.
and this is a great place where you can, I talk about that you should have three networks when you should have a network of where you're going, a network where peers, and then a network from where you've been. But this is a great example where you can have a peer network, a peer mentor, where you can have a computer science colleague that can help teach you more about machine learning, and you can teach them about power. And so I really think it's a great time for the young professionals, because especially for those that are students now are learning about all these details, they can actually teach their colleagues that may be more senior than them. And so, I talk about this with mentors and mentees. Sometimes you're the mentor and sometimes you're the mentee.
Yeah.
So I think in the machine learning and AI space, it's a great opportunity for young professionals as they enter companies to be able to help their colleagues understand the impacts and opportunities here.
Great. And when you say this digitalization of this power and energy sector, we could see that more and more data is involved. And there is also a security issue that comes along with this data part, where the industry is actually hesitant in sharing the data. So, do you think there will be a kind of a barrier for research opportunities in digitalization because of this data security?
I think people understand that barrier is there. There's work being done on how do we share information without, whether it's competitive. You don't want someone to have a competitive advantage. How do we share that information for benefit and not for economic gain or some other aspect? One of the things in the research space, we're seeing more and more groups try to have test cases where they can anonymize real systems and that kind of thing, seeing data sets that are available so researchers can work on that. I think we're seeing more and more of that. And actually, in the US, the Department of Energy has encouraged different kind of libraries where people can do that because they understand that you need to work on real data in our space, and
Mm.
having the real AMI data to be able to make some, look at algorithms, or having the real time data is important. And I think there's more and more understanding that that's important, and we see efforts. I would say the IEEE PES is one of those places, right? We have standard test cases for distribution, for transmission. We're seeing more in spaces with um, the solar and wind and storage, where you can test some of your algorithms, and so I think we're seeing more and more of that. But I think that's a place IEEE PES can help be a leader, because not it's not a certain company trying to sell something, but as much as pulling together for the benefit of the community and the power and energy community. So that's
Yeah.
really an opportunity there.
Good. That's a good information because I have been hearing this data security issues, and the industry is also being hesitant in sharing the data. But if IEEE PES can come up with a solution for it, then I think it would be really helpful for the researchers out there. And we also have this data port where we have a few sample data sets. And when I remember when I went through one of the solar time series data there, it just has the data set and it doesn't say any other information. And it, probably because you mentioned about this anonymous uh, data, they just give you the data which you can work on, but then they don't say any other, disclose any other information related to it.
No, and there are lots of, as we talk about solar and wind and penetration, there's lots of data sets out there for different parts of the world that you can share, can help with some of your modeling and activities. Um, in one of my classes, I use a software called Homer, where we use the data sets, and people could look at some different microgrid and integrated grid solutions. So there are solutions out there, but and that's been something we've talked about for a long time,
Mm.
in my almost 3 decades of trying to find. It's better, much better now than it was before. That we need more than a 4 bus or 3 node system that we are testing on, and having that real data, and more of that's available. And I think as we look at archives and people look at past data,
Mm.
I think by working together we can find some solutions so people can test their algorithms and compare them. How do we compare apples to apples, right? That people are comparing between two similar cases, but if everyone makes up their own distribution system or microgrid, it's very hard to see how the applications compare to each other.
Okay, great. When you mentioned about this electric vehicles and also this interconnecting it to the grid, I was actually thinking, I'm not sure if this was already addressed by a lot of researchers out there. How does the standalone system would be effective in such scenarios rather than directly connecting to the grid with some kind of solar or any other uh, generation could directly power the charging stations along with the batteries? Would that be economical, or would we have still have to depend on the grid?
I would think, the challenge for the electric vehicles is the amount of time you want to charge.
Mm.
And, if you're talking about charging overnight, having solar and a battery, you may have some capabilities there. But most
Mm.
people don't. They want to be able to do similar to what they would do with a gas powered car, that they can pull up and in 15 minutes or 30
Mm.
minutes be out. So I'm not sure the standalone solutions will have enough energy
Mm.
to provide that. But that's an interesting concept. We see that in some of the activities we've done through IEEE Smart Village, is doing that for cell phone charging to enable people in rural areas. So I think it would be, you can do that for smaller batteries, but I'm not sure that would work for electric vehicles. It may have an opportunity for like e-rickshaws, or some of the smaller cars that there could be. some of those kind of things with some batteries and solar. But I think that's going to be harder with electric vehicles just because of the energy density needed.
Okay, I get it. Thanks for addressing that, Noel.
Sure.
You mentioned about this diversity and inclusion. We know that even now the energy sector is kind of male dominant. We don't see much of women leaders in the organizations, though it has improved from the past. Still, the upper management positions are mostly held by men, especially our sector. Since you're involved in activities related to the recruitment, retention, and advancement of women students and professionals in STEM careers, what are the initiatives that you have implemented in order to recruit more women towards STEM careers? And how can they be retained and also guided?
Right. So, I think you bring up a good point, right? It's a pipeline issue. Is first we have to have more women in bachelor's degrees, masters, and PhDs, and then we need to have women advance along the way. And I think there are a couple things that I think are important related to these. One of the ones is I think it's really important we talk about, particularly in some of my experiences in the U.S., is we talk to middle school, high school, and college students about how you can have a personal life and a career in engineering and in the power and energy space. And in some cases in the U.S., we see women self-select out of engineering because they think they can't have a family and have a career. And I think that's something we need to have role models that show that you can have a family and a career. And that's important to have, like you said, to have different role models there. I think the other aspect we have to have is we need to continue to promote each other. We need to promote each other for awards and for new positions. One of the things that's a study, and that's also in the LinkedIn book, is a woman won't apply for a new position typically unless she has all the traits. And studies show a man could have 50% or less of the requirements of the job and will apply for it because I'll just learn those along the way. And so one of the things that I've done a lot is try to encourage women to apply for leadership opportunities, for awards, for recognitions, so that they that and even myself, my imposter syndrome, um, I about 5 or 6, or actually about almost 10 years ago, some colleagues said they wanted to nominate me for fellow of the American Society for Engineering and Education. And I said, I'm not ready yet. I haven't done enough. You need to just wait. They said, well, we're going to do it with or without you. And I said, okay, so I'll help. So I got it the first year, and they were kind of like, see, and here I was trying to promote women, and I had self-doubt. So I think we have to encourage each other to have to do things. One of the things, I went to a workshop on what we called implicit bias. Some of the things that happen that are just little things that happen on how people are biased in different ways. And one of the things they said, women who promote themselves, it's considered negative, but women who promote other women are considered positive. So I said we can have promotion partners. So Preeti and I can be partners, and I can promote you, you can promote me, and then we're both considered positive and we get promoted. So one of the things I do is I have colleagues, if they're not comfortable celebrating an award or something that's happened, send me the information and I'll promote it for them. And so that's something I've done. Also, just getting networks together, getting groups together. In the early 90s, we started getting women power faculty who were at the general meeting, PES general meeting, together for a meal, and we had 5 of us. And now we have so many people, we can't get together for a dinner. We just have a meeting because we have 30 to 40 women that are part of that. So some of it is just getting networks together and meeting people. And one of the important things for me was finding people that were my at my life stage, as well as being engineers. So um, when I started my career at Michigan Tech, Martha Sloan was the first woman president of IEEE, and she was a colleague. And that was great. She had a lot of great insights, but she was empty nest. She didn't have kids at home, and I had a 1 year old and a 5 year old. And so I was at a different life stage. And so how do we find also people that are at our same life stage, that are with young kids, with high schoolers, empty nesters like I am, uh, and that help us get advice and talk about some of those kind of things. So a lot of the activities I've done have been about promoting women to think about opportunities for jobs, to try to have professional development seminars and things to advance themselves, and then also looking at ways to where their career path, balancing professional and personal activities, as well as dual career. Those have been a lot of the activities that I've done over my career.
I should say I'm really inspired. I literally don't have words to express, and many of the things that you said actually resembles my traits also. When you say, like, when you're applying for an award or a particular position, okay, these are the requirements. Okay, one, two, no, three is not there, four is not there, five is not there. Okay, I'm not eligible, so I just drop it. And I like this idea of making a deal with your partner for the promotions. And this also, I have experienced it myself, and also from my colleague as well. Whenever you're being awarded, even if it is a small appreciation from your colleague or a senior, uh, I basically feel hesitant in order to share it. And even for a talk, if I'm invited, people might be sharing the posters, but then I don't do it myself. It feels a little awkward sense for me, and that keeps me pulling backward. Okay, I shouldn't be doing this. So this kind of thought actually, I have experienced it myself. But then, from what you said just right now, I feel that I don't have to have that kind of thought. Uh, you have the potential within you, and that's why you are being invited or you're being awarded, and you don't have to feel hesitant in order to share that. I think that's a very positive note.
Yeah, I think the promotion partners is a great way that helps, so it
Mm,
doesn't look like you're just self promoting.
exactly. You are getting promoted, but by someone else. I like that idea. I haven't heard this kind of idea from anybody else. So this is something that we should all be practicing.
I think it's a great idea, and it helps all of us. Uh, because all of us sometimes feel we don't want to self promote, and so
Mm,
that's, I think, having someone else that can promote you and encourage you, and that's kind of where the peer network comes in, where people,
mhm,
I think people worry about mentors a lot, but I think the peer network can be as important in your
mhm.
career.
Okay, that's really nice. Look, we have heard a lot about your professional journey over the years, what you have all been doing. But let's now hear something about your volunteering activities, especially with IEEE and IEEE Power and Energy Society. Like, what are the initiatives that you are involved in currently, and how can the society members and also young professionals contribute to such initiatives?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about my journey overall, and then we can talk more about current initiatives. But I started. What I think is important is to find a place and start. I started as a member of a subcommittee at PES, and then did some work with that subcommittee. Then became the subcommittee chair, and then based on some of that work, I was asked to be the awards chair and work at the PES level. And then soon after that, I was asked to run for secretary, and I spent time as secretary, treasurer, um, and then was elected president. first president-elect and 6 years. So I spent about 12 years on the IEEE PES governing board. I've also worked on some IEEE committees. And what I think is important is that you find a niche and that you get involved in that. And you work, if, as a volunteer, if you are supportive and do good work, people will notice you, and then you'll have opportunities to do other particular activities. But really, IEEE gives you, even though I've spent a lot of time and effort with IEEE PES, I've gained way more from those experiences. I've learned leadership experience, leadership skills. I've learned opportunities of organizing events, conferences. I've organized conferences. I've learned how to deal with challenges when people disagree, and how to work on that. I've learned, and I've had a huge network through my PES interactions across time. And so I really encourage people, even though it takes time, that I find when you're volunteering in your professional organization, I've gotten back way more than the time and effort I put into it. And what I think is important is for you to find your niche on what you like to do. And just like this what we're doing now, find something that's unique and you have the skills and interest in, and then you can contribute to the greater good. And that may be on the technical side, that may be helping develop new test cases by using industry, working with industry to get some of those test cases. It may be a working group that's working on a particular technical topic. And so, or it may be a committee that you want to be, and we have, multiple other activities going on. We have IEEE Smart Village. That's something that I've been involved with on electrifying rural areas and coming open source opportunities for that. And, to be honest, over the last couple of years, a lot of these now are much more accessible because you don't have to physically go to a meeting. They have some kind of online presence, and you can get involved in that. But I really think you need to find where your niche is. If you're interested in publications, you want to ask to be a reviewer, and you don't have to be a 20-year person. You can be a early career reviewer of papers and things like that. And you can even partner. One of the things I often did with my graduate students is we would do the papers together, we would review them together. So they would learn how to do reviews and some of that. So there's lots of opportunities across IEEE and PES to get involved. So find your passion and your niche, whether it's young professionals, whether it's women in power, whether it's power and energy education, whether it's one of the many technical areas. Find that and get involved. And that creates a network, and you work with that, you create lifelong friendships and networks for your career.
Great. And I think this is where, as students, they should be understanding, because what I have seen is students tend to get involved in IEEE quite a lot, but then they don't really understand what is their passion in IEEE. IEEE has got a lot of opportunities, diverse opportunities, and when you become a young professional in IEEE, then you start realizing, okay, this is going to be the area that gives you the pleasure, the passion to work on. But sometimes I've also seen that they fail to understand, even as young professionals, early career professionals, they fail to understand how IEEE can root you in your career. And if we are able to find the right path and the right niche, as you said, it's going to give you a lot of wonders.
Yes, it is. And, the challenge when you're a student, you have lots of time to learn different things. But when you become a professional, you need to be able to have ways to learn quickly in very, very focused areas. And I think IEEE PES provides that opportunity to be involved, but also to learn about topics where someone else has summarized it for you, and you don't have to go out and do all the research.
Yeah. So, Noel, what is that thing that keeps you motivated in IEEE and also in your work?
I think in general, I think giving back, and one of the things I love about being a professor is I get to work with engineering and I get to work with people. And IEEE is another area where I get to work with engineering and work with people. And I think it's really exciting to see new concepts because in the power space we're helping people, we're helping keep the lights on, we're helping with resiliency, we're helping create a greener plant, we're helping green a green solution by how do we integrate. And so really I think our space, we're making a difference, and it's easy to see that difference. Some of the other fields it's harder to see how your impact is. But so I think that really, for me, it's helping the next generation see that energy, that excitement in the energy space and enthusiasm, and want to be a part of it and want to make a difference in what they do. And so that excites me. And I'm very excited by seeing the early career young professionals, that the enthusiasm that we have. And I'm very confident that you're going to create those solutions that we don't figure out as a mid career or getting to later career person. I think there's a lot to a lot. I get a lot of energy from the interactions I have with IEEE and IEEE PES, and that really helps me see the all the great things that are happening in our profession.
Okay, that's very kind of you, and uh, it's actually a very good and positive attitude because many of the people out there who are in IEEE at different positions, they don't really see this aspect of giving back to the society. Rather than that, they just think about how can they just grow in their professional life or a personal life. So this is something that I guess everybody should be taking care of. You are learning something, you are getting the opportunities, but then at the same time, it is important to give back to the society as well.
It is, and as they're making sure there are people that come behind you to be able to support those activities. And I think that's one thing, is that it can be, you're getting out of it, but you also need to make sure you're helping the next generation.
Good. I agree to that. And apart from IEEE, you're also involved in the American Society for Engineering Education. So, what sort of activities or programs do you undertake in it? Is it very much different from the way IEEE works?
It's similar to the way IEEE works, and it's also an international organism, more international now, even though it's called American Society of Engineering Education. And really, that's really about how do we change how we teach people about engineering? How do we attract different folks to engineering? How do we let people? How do we help people understand math and science, and that they can do it? And so it's really about, how do we create the best tools for professors to be able to teach students. When my dad went to school, he used a slide rule, and then we had calculators, and then we had computers, and now we have online opportunities. And I know my sons, they'll go to YouTube and just watch a video on something that they want to learn about. And so how do we keep students interested in the classroom, and how do students change as time? You're a digital native, you've had computers, and you're just very comfortable with that. So how can I teach you in a way that encourages you and makes you excited about what you're doing? And so that's what that group really does, is how to make sure the engineering professors can help the students learn the best way. And what are the best ways of small group discussions, using online resources, uh, examples, just using all the different resources out there. So ASCE really is looking at how do you make education even better.
And I think that's a key area which keeps evolving over a period of time. There is no perfect solution for it, every now and then something or the other developments happen, and you'll have to adjust your solutions accordingly. And it is one area where there is always improvements.
It is, and our students change. Our students change. Now that I'm old enough to be the students' moms, I have a different perspective, and I learn differently than you learn. And
Hmm.
how do we make sure that that I'm not teaching the way I learned, but I'm trying to teach the way you learn to help you learn more. And those are all important discussions to have. And there's actually ASCE does a lot of research into education on what techniques work and what
Hmm.
techniques don't work, the same way we do in our research in power and energy, what works and don't work doesn't work. So that's where ASCE is, and it's a great. There's a lot of open resources if people are interested in academic careers. There's a lot of open access papers that ASCE has on different teaching techniques. And they even have a young, new faculty group that does a lot as well. That's kind of like the young professionals group that you can learn best practices and things like that.
This sounds interesting, and like after hearing this, I feel a lot happier that the students, I wouldn't say concerns, but the needs are being addressed uh, very well.
We're working on that. So
Okay. And from what I heard so far and what I've seen, like you're very much occupied with your work, your extra activities, be it volunteering or something else. You need to take care of your family. How do you maintain the balance between your professional and personal life? Do you have any kind of prioritization rule that you follow?
yeah, so a couple of things. I think one of the most important things I would say to people is find a partner that supports you and your goals. And this is really important. That seems obvious, but having a partner that also not only his or her goals, but also your goals. And I'm fortunate my partner helps me when I have imposter syndrome and pushes me to apply for those things that I'm not sure I'm ready for. But I think and also is very supportive in our family, in supporting and raising our boys, being part of the home activities and things like that. And so I think that is really important. And I tell people with dual careers, communication is very important with your partner. Talking about, okay, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, and the other thing, time management is really, really important, and planning ahead of time, sitting down and talking about what your goals are for a year, for time, and figuring out those things. I think COVID has had us all reassess kind of what our personal and professional interactions, and so I try to. I'm not always good at this, but try to have a couple nights a week that I'm not working, and balance. So the boys are out of the house now, but some of the different things we did was when they were younger, we would come home and then we would work late at night. So I think there are different life stages, and you have to look at those different life stages and then decide whether or not
Hmm.
how you're going to prioritize. But I think there's a book that I think is really good. I'd really recommend. It's called The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think that really talks about how you prioritize um, important versus urgent things to do, so that you do longer term planning. You do a little bit every day on something instead of waiting to the last minute to do that homework assignment or whatever. And I think that book would really. I read that book earlier in my career, and that really helped me look at prioritization. How do you set your goals? Goal setting, I think, is really important. And the one other thing I think is important, I wrote some things down to make sure I didn't forget, is if any of us, if our cell phone is at 10%, we're looking for a place to plug in and charge it. But sometimes we don't think about ourselves, and when our energy's low, making sure we're recharging. And that's the other thing that's important, is to make sure that we worry about our mental health, that we worry about what we're doing related to recharging us. Because as engineers, we can work and work and work a lot, but it's important that we find ways to recharge. And for each of us, that's different, but figure out what that is for you to recharge. And then make sure you put time in your day, in your week, in your year to recharge. And I find after I recharge, I was out of the office for 2 weeks and wasn't on email. That really helped me recharge and see things in a positive way instead of being stressed out.
That was a really good move. Though I was a bit worried seeing your auto reply.
Yeah, I know you were. I was hard to reach, but yes, it really helps you recharge and getting off email, getting off social media for a while to help your mind rest. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I have seen people in my company also, they just go for the vacation for a week or a two. And for that entire vacation period, they're completely off from the work. No emails, no messages, nothing. So it's perfectly me time or maybe the family time.
Exactly. We have to worry about ourselves and our families and find time for that. So, and one of the things in the Seven Habits, it talks about just go for a week or two and write down your time and see how write down what you do and see if that's the percentages are what you want it to be or what you expect it to be.
Okay. That's another takeaway for me, at least, with the discussion today. Let me go and check back on this seven habits of highly effective people. I think that should also motivate me and also the young listeners.
Yeah, it's a great book and it's available worldwide. And I really think I've done a couple workshops with students on it. And
Mm.
I think it really has helped me along the way to really look at goal setting and look at how to work with people and try to find win-win situations. Um,
Mm.
and so it's got a lot of, and there's a lot of resources online that you can, if you do a search for them on the Seven Habits, and you can see some of that, and as well as the book, and so I'd encourage people to read that.
Perfect. As you said, this is another way of improving the education or the way kids learn today.
Exactly.
And we know that this power and energy sector is quite diverse. There are a lot of opportunities in this field. We have already covered a lot, the major ones today. So it might be hard to say the exact skill sets needed to succeed in this career. But for young professionals who are in this field or who wish to start their career in this field, what are the key skills that they should possess? It could be technical or non technical. What do you think?
Well, I think obviously math and science are a big part of this, and so I think a strong math background. We're seeing more and more computer science skills. Understanding Python, looking at other aspects, being able. I used to have students when I would say, "Why are you in electrical engineering?" They say, "Well, I don't like programming." And now, we're all computer scientists. We're using MATLAB, we're using Python, we're using different software tools. And so I think we're not computer scientists, but we're users of computers
Mm.
for our simulations and activities. And particularly in the power space, it's not like some of our friends that in microelectronics that they can put it in a lab. We can't put the power grid in a 10 by 10 foot 10 by 10 foot lab and we have to do a lot of simulations and activities. So I think those are some important skills to have. Computer science, we're seeing more in, as we talk about power systems, power electronics is more and more important. So having some exposure to power electronics, I think, is a really, really good field area to also make sure you're part of. And that helps give you, and the challenge is someone's going, well, I can't do all those things. But I think in addition to say power, pick power systems, pick a second area, whether that's computer science, that can be controls, that can be cybersecurity, that can be communications, but make sure you have some other areas, because power is so diverse right now in so many different areas. Even if you just have a class or get a book and read about it, then you can communicate with someone else on your team that's more of an expert in that area, and you know the questions to ask in some of that. So I think those are some good technical skills to think about. You know, talking about the 7 habits. You know, goal setting, understanding the big picture, I think is important. I encourage students to think about, what do you want, where do you want to be in students. So at 50 years old, where do you want to be? And then what are the steps to get you to that? I mean, I have a lot of students that say, I want to own my own company by a certain time. And what are the things you need to know for that? And what are the skills you need? And sometimes for some companies, you need to do an international experience. So do you need to learn a foreign language, so that you can work in another area, and with companies and things like that? So kind of pick your goal, and then kind of write down, what are the sub goals that you need in order to achieve that. And once you do that, then set about trying to do some of those along the way to help you in what you're doing. I also think the other important thing is communications, both written and verbal communications. I went into engineering because I didn't like to write, but all I do as an engineering professor is write. So learning communication skills, being able to talk to not only technical people but non-technical people about what you do. I mean, can you do an elevator speech that you can talk to someone that's 10 years old and explain to them what you're doing in engineering? And those are also skills that are good to develop. And not all of these have to be developed in college, but there are things that you can work on, presenting, and there are different resources out there to learn how to present and get practice in that, because you have to practice those things for it to become comfortable.
Okay. That was a solid list of items or suggestions that can be focused upon that you gave just right now. Because I remember when my brother took computer science for his engineering, I was like, no, I'm not going to do programming at all. And then I opted for electrical engineering. But now that electrical sector is also moving towards some programming, and it's kind of become mandatory that, okay, you need to be knowing at least the basics of programming. Unless otherwise, I don't think there will be a future for your profession in this sector. Now I get it. Now I understand.
It's a tool now. It's not that you're writing programs for the same way it was 20 or 30
Mm,
years ago. It's a tool to be able to model, to
mm,
simulate, to look at things, and it is important. And we see that skills, and not everybody's excited about that part of it, but it is something I think is an important tool as we move forward. As we talk about machine learning and AI, understanding some of the computer science basics helps you be able to do more in those areas.
yeah. And it actually comes down to this evil thought that, okay, you're automating every stuff. So wouldn't the job of people be affected? Because most of the things are done by machines rather than humans. So that is again a kind of nightmare for people out there, I would say.
Well, I think it's a worry, but I think it related to, we still there's still a lot of science and math behind it that we need to understand, and the computers may get to there eventually, but we still have a lot of contributions we can make.
Okay, I'm a bit relieved. Okay. Oh my god, I just realized we are a bit over time. I think if I continue this talk, I could even spend more hours on this. But yeah. I think in the interest of time, we may have to wind up the session. But before concluding this, if you can please give some final remarks on how young engineers can utilize the opportunities in power and energy sector. Uh, what do you think they should be doing in order to help create a sustainable world?
Yes, so thank you so much for this opportunity. This has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and it really great way to start my day today. I think one of the most important things is to find your niche, find a place that you enjoy contributing, whether that's in work or school or in volunteering with IEEE and PES. And I think when you have fun at what you do, it doesn't seem like work, and so you can really make a difference. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is to get some networks, increase your networks, and both face to face as well as online networks that can help you along the way. And as one of the things I say is, I say resumes are terrible things because they talk about all our successes. But realize when you look at any resume, there are failures behind that. There are papers that were rejected. There are jobs that were um, rejected. And so you're going to have ups and downs along the way and failures, but you're going to get through those by having a network, having friends and colleagues that can support you, and I'm confident you're going to make a difference in what you do. So have fun along the way, and there are going to be challenges, but turn those lemons to lemonade and find ways to make new opportunities. And one of the biggest things I try to do is from every failure, figure out something I learned something from it so that I don't repeat that failure and have opportunities in the future. But again, this has been a great opportunity, a great conversation. I appreciate the chance to visit, and look forward to seeing many people this week at the IEEE PES General Meeting. To be face to face again after 3 years is exciting. And if you see this or if you have questions, feel free to reach out. The next week I'm going to be a little crazy, but on LinkedIn or through Twitter or email me, reach out. And if I can help in any way and get you connected, then that's part of what I like to do.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Dr. Noel, for being part of this talk show, which was mainly to give this kind of motivation to our listeners the same way I have felt it right now. I have learned quite a lot today, to be honest. The way that my thinking should be progressing, the different ways that I should start adopting myself, either in the thinking or the action, and quite a lot of useful information and advices, suggestions. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you, though online. I hope we could meet sometime face to face in one of the any of the IEEE events. So thank you so much for being part of this talk show.
Thank you, and I hope you have a great evening since you're in India, and take care.
Sure. Thank you so much, and thanks to our listeners. See you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.